Hello, world. My name is Scott, or as I affectionately call myself, the bitter old queen. So, I am not a professional or a therapist, so my stories and experiences are anecdotal only, okay? So, and I also suggest that you watch this in 125 speed, okay? Because I talk like an old man. It's funny watching myself back. It's like watching the old me at 125 speed because, oh my God, the ravages that time has made. Oh my. Anyway, episode is about me coming to New York City in 1982, early November, and from when I got off the bus. The episode before this, I did my growing up gay story, and but this is about me arriving in New York. So I step off the bus, and I had already memorized the map in my head because you didn't want to pull out a map, in the middle of New York. And so I'm walking to the Y, and this bag lady comes up to me, this classic bag lady, and she hands me a flower, right? And I was like, "Oh, thank you," and she was very sweet. And so I walked all the way to the Y with this flower in my hand, or half the way there, or whatever. So I went to the Y and checked in, and then as soon as I get there, a guy follows me to my room, and he wanted to get lucky, and I just said I'm tired, get away, whatever, and I shut the door in his face. So, but right from the beginning, it was this place was known for having all the gay guys stay there. So I wasn't surprised, but I was like, wow, this is really off to a start. So anyway, I took a nap then, and I slept like till it was like right getting dark when I woke up, and then I went out to get something to eat at the coffee shop at 23rd and 7th, and then I took a walk, and I walked up to the corner of the building where I live now, and I remember I wasn't really noticing much of anything, just everything, and but when I walked to this corner, I looked up and I saw this building, and I thought, I love that building. That is so cool. I've never quite seen anything like it. Wow, I'd love to live in a building like that someday. Isn't that cool? And then I turned around and I went back, and wouldn't you know, a little over a month later, guess who lived in the building? Dennis. So, which was like bizarre, right? So anyway, I go back to the Y and I meet several guys. People leave their doors open. It was different times. People talk to each other and stuff. And so anyway, I met these like they were a bunch of characters too. Like there was one guy, his name was Sammy, and he was from Virginia. Okay, and he was a black guy, and he was so funny, and he was just the cutest thing you ever seen. And then there's this other guy, Bill. But for some reason, everybody called him Tiffany. That was his nickname. And he was from Connecticut. He was a throwaway kid, kind of thing. Then there was another guy. His name was Armando, and but they called him Frenchie for some reason. I don't know why. I don't remember. But and he was a Latin guy too, which was really funny. And then the Indian guy who tried to pick me up, his name was Robbie, and he had quite a reputation around the Y. So, but these guys were cool, and they knew, I knew my situation, and they said, "Hey, we can get you a job at this after hours club that we work at, and we know they're looking for, some people. So, come on in with us. So, but we'll take you to some of these other clubs in the meanwhile." So, they took me around to different places and introduced me to people, and I just couldn't believe all the people I was meeting. Everybody was so cool and so nice, and people also, everybody was from a different walk of life, different religions. I just loved the diversity. I couldn't get enough of it. So the other thing I remember too was that Madonna was all. Anyway, I got hired as a waiter at this club then, but when I was there from the very first night I was in this club, Madonna was playing the song "Everybody," her first song, and it was captivating because there hadn't been a lot of dance music out. It was it was like a new spin on dance and everything, and it was really good. And I asked who it was, and they said, "Oh, it's this girl Madonna, and she comes in here with her tapes all the time, and asked the DJ to play them." So, and I was like, "Well, she's going to be a star," and they all agreed. Everybody was like, "Yeah, she's going to be a star. Look what happened." So that was, like I say, November of 1982. So um, at this point, I didn't have a type, and I was being very cautious. And I had heard about grid, I knew about that, and I didn't want to get involved with anyone. I didn't want to have sex with anyone. I wasn't even getting drunk. I didn't even want to drink, not at all, you know. And so anyway, I start working at this place. And the first week I'm there, Dennis was on vacation, so I didn't even know him in the first week or so. And then one day I'm setting up the dance floor, and I look over and I see him through some glass, and he's fighting with somebody over some ashtrays. But right away I looked and I said, "Oh, that guy's Portuguese, I bet," you know. And he was Portuguese and Italian, and so, and I thought, oh, he's a handsome guy, you know, and then I just liked the way he was kibitzing with his person and stuff. And I thought, oh, he's somebody I want to get. I said, you know, I bet I'm going to get to know him, and I bet we're going to be friends forever, you know. And but I wasn't thinking that term, and I said, I bet we're going to know each other forever. And but I wasn't thinking like terms of lover, and because to me he looked to be about 28 or 30. And then when I got to know him, I was absolutely shocked when he told me he was 38 because he did not look anywhere near 38. So, but we got to know each other. We would set up our respective areas and then we would come together and everybody'd have lunch or whatever. And so Dennis and I got to know each other. We talked about books and music and movies, a lot of movies and family and all this stuff. So all the other guys, all they wanted to talk about was, well, you know what? Um, so then Dennis said, well, let's go to a movie some night. So let's go. And he wanted to see Sophie's Choice. And Sophie's Choice is not a date movie. It's a Holocaust thing, and it's very depressing. So that was the movie we saw. And then we went out to eat, and then we came back here. And well, the rest is history. That was December 11th. And let's see, the morning of December 12th, I discovered I was an ass man because when I got up, he was in the bathroom, and I went and I looked, and I saw his silhouette came down, and I went, and I was like, "Oh my God, I'm an ass man!" And I came in, and right away, I was like, you know, I said, "Can I come in and pee?" So, and he was like, "Sure." So, and I right away I started teasing him. I'm like, you know, um, I'm like, saying, "Hey, do you have a license for that thing?" You know, and things like that. So, and you know, so he appreciated my humor right off the bat, which I appreciated. So. But we were immediately sexually compatible. I didn't know a lot, and he helped me, you know, do some of the things I'd heard about, wanted to try this and that, and I felt comfortable and everything. It was great. And so even our scents matched, if you know what I mean, because some guys, you know, I didn't like their scent, and his scent with me was like perfume. So, and he doesn't really have much of a scent thing. I have it. I'm like so sensitive to scent, it's ridiculous. So. But our first New Year's Eve, Dennis got us into the studio, and the Weather Girls performed "Raining Men," and then we had a kiss. He said right before midnight, he goes, "Oh, if we have a kiss that lasts over the stroke of midnight, we'll have a kiss that lasts for 2 years." And I thought that was so romantic. And then immediately I thought, "Oh God, who ran that line on him?" But it worked for me, and I was like, "Absolutely!" So it's been a tradition of ours all these years. We always have a kiss that lasts for 2 years on the stroke of midnight on New Year's Eve. So very romantic, right? So um, I left the bar business right away. Then I was a terrible waiter, and I started working as a porter in an apartment building. It was an illegal job, but you know, it did the job. So and he worked midnight to 8 basically, and I worked 11 to 7. And we were like two ships that passed in the night the first 3 years we were together. And we had the same days off, so we'd spend weekends together and we had, you know, it worked out terrifically, you know. I mean, and we had this honeymoon period that just lasted for years, you know. So, but within months of us being together, I felt, you know, people were telling us, "Oh my God, you guys are so good together, you're going to be together forever." So, and then I met Dennis's sister. She didn't think so. She said, "Oh, I was probably going to leave him," and you know, she didn't really care for me. So I tried to get along with her, and you know, I gave up though, and but I didn't want to come between them, so I just let them do their thing and try to stay out of the way. You know, if she wasn't going to like me, I couldn't force it. You know, you can't force somebody to like you, so that's fine. And she that was her right. She didn't have to like me. So, but so in summer of 1983, we went to the Diana Ross concert in Central Park the first day. It got rained out. We almost got trampled to death. I met RuPaul that day in Central Park. I don't know if you remember me, RuPaul. Probably not. Anyway, um, and but then we talked. We were having kind of troubles around then. I shouldn't say that, but Dennis, I think he was regretting. during that summer, he was like, I don't know, and so I told him where I sat him down and I said, don't string me along. You know, I had a friend already that had offered me that if things didn't work out, I could come stay with him. And I wouldn't want to do that, but it was nice. And anyway, so but Dennis he came around, he realized, he says, yeah, no, he says, I love you and I don't want you going anywhere. You belong with me and you're going to stay here. And, we're going to make the best of it. And we decided that, you know, with HIV and everything else, that we were just better off together and we were so compatible in every way, and we got along so good too. So, we both come from big families, so we know what it's like to get along with people. A lot of people that I think, have only children and stuff, it'd be a lot harder to get along and share like we have to. So, but we were very secure, even to the point where we could spot each other's types, and we would give each other the 1 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 2 o'clock kind of thing, um, to point out each other's type, and he liked them tall and thin. I liked them short and big butt. So and but all we could do was just stay home and act like bunnies, and we became our own little family with our cats. Okay, my sister was cool with me. She was 5 years younger than me, so she was 13, 14 when I came out. She was cool with it. My mom said all the same old tropes every mother said at the time, So, and by the end of '83, though, we were noticing people were dropping out of sight. I mean, it was very noticeable, and there were several friends we knew that literally had just dropped off the face of the earth, and other ones we'd hear about had died, and some had gone home to die, and stuff like that. So during that time too, I remember I was going across Park Avenue, and the hookers were up there, and there were a couple. There was a pair of them, and as I'm going across, the one says to me, "Hey, honey, you want a date?" And I looked at her. I said, "Sorry, honey, I'm gay." And she looked back at me. She goes, "Ooh, AIDS." And I was taken aback, and I looked at her, and I was like, like, wow, one to talk. But anyway, that's how bad things were for us gay guys. Even the streetwalkers couldn't stand, hated the gay guys because they looked at us and they saw AIDS. That's all they saw. They would think you had AIDS no matter what. So anyway, the first time I went up to Massachusetts, Dennis's parents were very nice to me, especially his dad, and they welcomed me. But then I stopped going up after a while because it was an issue of comfort and it was an issue of respect. They knew that we lived together. They knew that duh, right? So, and they would split us up. I would have one room on one floor, and he would have a room on the other floor, and my room had no heater, crappy heat and no air conditioning. And was in air conditioned comfort, and heat worked great in his room, and it just pissed me off. So I said, I'm not going up anymore. And we had words about it, and he was not happy with me. But I just said it's a matter of respect and comfort, and I'm not doing it. So about a year went by, and then he was talking to his mom one day, and she asked to speak to me. And she said, I'm sorry, did I say something? Did my husband say something? Because you're always welcome at our house, but you stopped coming up. You're always welcome. And I said, thank you very much. I'll try to make it up soon. It's nothing anybody said or anything like that. So then Dennis, a few months later, Dennis went up in the summer. It was beastly hot, and he called me and said, come up. And I said, no. And then he said, my mom is gone. And just that was enough because his mother was a nice woman, but she wanted to go everywhere with us. We couldn't get a minute alone. So anyway, so I said, okay, I'll come up. And when him and his dad came to the train station to pick me up, his dad said, I put in a cot in Dennis's room for you because it's going to be a hot night, and this way you'll have air conditioning. And from then on, every night, every time I went up there, the cot was set up and the sheets were fresh folded up on the end and everything. And that was how I started being able to sleep in Dennis's room. Now, he still wouldn't let me sleep in his bed with him, but at least I could sleep in his room in air conditioned comfort and stuff like that. But anyway, that was quite I had to put my foot down there. So around 85, then Dennis and we both changed jobs. I started my own apartment cleaning business. He started working as an executive assistant. Okay. Did the apartment cleaning because I wanted to go to school and it would be flexible hours. So I also started going to therapy at the time and I went for about a year. And that's how I got my head together so I could go to college. So it took me 5 years to get there and 5 years to get through. I graduated in 92 with a BS in health sciences, and I only had $3,000 in student loans because I worked my whole way through and paid for my most of my tuition. So, and or actually, I paid for all my tuition. I just had to borrow money for incidentals and stuff. So, there's one other thing I want to say too about, a lot of people are against porn and everything, but for me, it saved me. Dennis used to travel a lot, especially when we first together in the early days of HIV. And having porn here in the house, I could take care of any urges in 20 minutes, you know what I mean? And it was done. And it actually saved me. So, like I say, some people have this thing against it, but it actually saved me. So, um, but also, and after 85, we just backed out of the gay world. We really didn't. We had gay friends, we had straight friends, but we just kind of the culture just wasn't our culture anymore. And it was just we just kind of wanted. I wanted to go to school, and he wanted to start a new career, and so we just did our own thing. And I would like to thank you for joining me, and to please like, comment, and subscribe, and do all that stuff. And again, thank you for coming to court, and you have been dismissed.